Hello, everyone.
Good afternoon.
And thank you for coming to the Geotalk. It's a small crowd in the interterm break, but it's going to be a good talk. Our speaker today is Trish Owen-Smith, who is from the University of Johannesburg. Trish did her PhD at Wits, finishing in 2014. That was followed by, depending on where you sit in the generational mix, that's either just the other day or ages ago. Yeah, and that was followed by postdoctoral work in Potsdam in Germany. And after that, she's been at UJ since 2016. And her work is in igneous pathology and geochemistry, including the Kunene complex, the Deccan traps, Tendeka basalts, a couple of other things that I may have forgotten, but I'll hand over to you.
Big words for use of that.
Oh, yeah.
Basalts. Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for the intro, Zubair. I guess I was told that this would be a student talk, mainly about the academic career. I don't see very many students here. So I may have to convince some of you in an academic career that you are still in the right career. So yeah, I guess I'm here representing Wits geoscience alumni in academia. I'm an igneous petrologist, geochemist, field geologist, a researcher and a lecturer at UJ just down the road. And I'm going to just try and introduce myself a little bit in the talk, although I think all of you actually know who I am. Even if you haven't officially met me, I still haunt these corridors regularly. So I'm sure you've seen me around. So I'll just tell you a little bit about my career and my time at Wits and what it's given me. I will try throw a little bit of science in there if there's time. And then the second part of the talk is basically a shameless plug for an academic career. So it's going to get a little bit soppy and motivational here. I think success in any career, and last week's speaker also said this, is essentially about opportunities and what you make of those opportunities. And certainly my time studying here at Wits, many years studying here at Wits, has given me all sorts of fantastic opportunities, many of which I wouldn't have got studying anywhere else. And so Wits, it gives you the edge, but it also gives you opportunities. And I've had opportunities to meet amazing, brilliant people here at Wits and be connected to people around the world and go fantastic places and expand my horizons and use the amazing facilities and resources here at Wits. And I've had a chance to make a contribution and an impact and have a voice here at Wits. And there have been some challenges and obstacles which have made me a better person. Those are always the ones that are difficult to see as opportunities, but they are. And of course, I've been here to see and be involved in some amazing science as part of my career. And so basically the first part of my talk is going to be demonstrating to you some of these opportunities I've had and what I've done with them and my time here at Wits. And then obviously since I left Wits, I've had an academic career, and that's been again about creating and taking up opportunities and doing fantastic science. But also for me, it's very much also about giving back those opportunities and creating opportunities for other people and making a path for those people to follow. So I'm going to try and convince you that that's something worthwhile. Okay, now's the time for lots of pictures. So I did all my degrees here in geoscience at Wits. I did from my bachelor's to my honors all the way through to my PhD. Like Zubair said, I finished in 2014, which Grant always likes to remind me is later than him, even though we started at the same time. And there's a picture there of my honors class all the way back in 2008, which does seem like a long time ago, but actually it was just yesterday. And yeah, that was on our honors field trip when we actually still went overseas for honors field trips. I think that was somewhere in Namibia. Not sure what our class's claim to fame was. Perhaps that we produced actually a record number of distinction candidates, but probably more famous for the constant desecration of the whiteboard in the honors classroom, which is always full of graffiti, geological or non-geological graffiti. And Matt would come in and put his hands on his head and just shake his head and clean the board again. So I have to say, when I came to Wits, I actually had no idea that I was going to be a geologist. I pitched up at first year registration, not really even knowing if I wanted to do a BSc or a BA. I ended up at the registration looking for the desk with the shortest queue. And there I was ambushed by one Professor Lou Ashwell, who I'm sure you all know. And he inveigled me into picking up geology as a first year course. And Lou can be very charming when he wants to be, and he's difficult to say no to. And so this was actually really one of the first opportunities that Lou was directly or indirectly responsible for giving me. And he went on then to be my honors research supervisor and my PhD supervisor. So I actually have lots to thank him for. So big shout out to Lou. And of course, everyone else who was part of my time here at the School of Geosciences. So I wasn't just desecrating honors boards with graffiti or rigging the Rocksock t-shirt slogan elections or drinking at the pig. I was also doing some work while I was here. So for my honors project, I was extremely lucky to actually be able to go all the way to the Seychelles, tropical island in the middle of the Indian Ocean, to do field work. And so it's really, what can I say? It's just like the postcards show. It's all white tropical beaches and palm trees and blue ocean and amazing wildlife and amazing geology and German tourists suntanning naked on the beach and all of that stuff. And so we went there. Our group of Wits geoscientists was joined by a team of geoscientists led by Franz Korsvik. He's here in the middle. He's currently director of SEED in Oslo, and he came with his team of researchers from Norway, all fantastic, really interesting people that I then got to interact with and learn from as an honors student. And this is us here looking extremely out of place in our geological field gear on the beach. So why did we go to the Seychelles? So the Seychelles is basically a fragment of continental crust that got stranded in the middle of the Indian Ocean during the breakup of the supercontinent of Gondwana during the Cretaceous. And so when India broke away from Madagascar and then moved northwards to collide with Asia and form the Himalayas and all of that exciting stuff, little bits of it actually got left behind in the process. And so most of the Seychelles Islands are actually Precambrian granitoids, that continental crust from Gondwana. But there are two islands, Silhouette Island, North Island, that are something completely different. They are essentially an alkaline complex that the group from Wits dated to be 63 million years old. And so the only other thing really around at that time in the area, kind of that same time period at the end of the Cretaceous, is the Deccan Traps continental flat volcanism in India, which is this catastrophic outpouring of magma that was related to the impact of the Reunion mantle plume. And so our investigation was really to see if there was any relation between those two things. So we did a whole bunch of stuff, and in the end, mainly from our paleomagnetic reconstructions and a whole range of geochemistry that we did, we found that the Seychelles actually were still pretty much attached to India at the time that this reunion plume magmatism, this Deccan event, took place. And we also saw that these particular alkaline rocks had geochemical signatures that showed that they came from a similar source to some of the Deccan Traps lavas. And you could see the influence of the Reunion mantle plume in that source. And this was kind of a big deal because, as you may know, this Deccan Traps catastrophic outpouring of magma and the associated atmospheric impact of that event is actually considered one of the main contributing factors to this mass extinction event at the end of the Cretaceous and the demise of the dinosaurs. And there's this debate about which had the bigger influence, the meteorite impact at Chicxulub or the Deccan Traps. And so showing the significance and the extent of this event, and now extending the extent of what was known far beyond the present day outcrop of the Deccan Traps, is actually an important contributor to that debate. So that was super amazing to be involved with as an honors student. So then I took a completely different path. So from tropical islands in the middle of the Indian Ocean, I needed a change of scenery. And so for my PhD, I went to the desert or the semi-desert of Namibia to study a layered mafic intrusion called the Doros complex, which you can see in the foreground here. So this is what Doros looks like in a satellite image. And you can see it's fantastically well exposed. So you're essentially looking at this lopolithic body that has been sliced in half by erosion. And so what's exposed there, those rings that you see are the layers in that layered mafic intrusion that you can see so brilliantly. And this has been called a textbook example of a layered mafic intrusion, except that nobody actually really knew much about it geologically. So that was my task as a PhD student, to investigate this complex and come up with some ways of how it must have formed. And our idea was that a small kind of manageable sized, well-exposed layered mafic intrusion like this might then give us some insights into processes that happen in much larger and more famous layered mafic intrusions like the Bushveld complex. So this was my first experience with rugged field work, going to this remote part of Namibia. And it was amazing. I was hooked. It was so much fun. I enjoyed all the challenges. And I got to hang out again with some really amazing people. I got to meet Dr. Roy Miller, the guru of Namibian geology. He accompanies us in the field. And also this crazy Dutchman, Prof. Douwer van Hinsbergen. These days, he spends most of his time writing about the geology of the Tour de France route, I believe. I learned a lot from these guys, and it was really special to be able to hang out with them in the field. And of course, I saw some amazing scenery and some amazing wildlife. Okay, so because so little was really known about Doros, we threw everything in the kitchen sink at it. We did mapping, we did petrography, geochemistry of all kinds, including isotopes. We looked at melt inclusions, did geophysics, magnetic, gravity data, did paleomag. I dated the complex, did argon-argon dating. This is why my PhD took so long. And this is why it actually started as a master's and then became a PhD. But so we came up with a whole lot of really interesting conclusions, but the take-home message really was that Doros was actually formed from several different batches of crystal-bearing magma in place of a short space of time, which obviously gives you something to think about for some of the larger layered mafic intrusions. And the Doros magmas actually are also from a mantle plume, a different one in this case, the Tristan mantle plume. And Tristan was a contributing factor in the separation of the western part of Gondwanaland, so about 130 million years ago, the breakup of South America and Southern Africa to form the Southern Atlantic Ocean. And so now the products of those plume melts are sitting on both sides of the Atlantic as part of the Parana-Itendeka large igneous province. And so we could actually see in Doros a significant component of this Tristan plume contribution. So I also then, because of my work on Doros, as part of the PhD, also did some paleomag on the Etzendeka lavas associated with it. And I actually got to go all the way to Norway to do the analyses on those samples. Thanks again to my connections with Trond Torsvik and his team from Norway. And I got to heat my rocks while sitting in this lab overlooking snowy slopes with deer walking across them and fjords in the distance. And that was a lot of fun. And so this work basically allowed us to reconstruct the positions of South America and Southern Africa at the time of the Tristan plume magmatism and this large igneous province. And so actually part of my time that I was meant to be doing my PhD, I was actually doing some other things. Another reason why it took so long, because of my interest in layered mafic intrusions, and actually because of Lou's fantastic connections, I was able to go as part of an international expedition to the Kiglerpate intrusion in Labrador. So this intrusion sits in a really remote part of northern Canada. It's only accessible by boat. It's frequented by icebergs and bears, including polar bears, which was pretty scary, although we didn't see any. And it's such a spectacularly beautiful part of the world and amazing geology. And again, worlds away from the deserts of Namibia and tropical islands in the middle of Seychelles. And I got to hang out with this kind of Oscar list of igneous petrologists famous around the world and learn so many things from them. And I'm still in contact with many of them. And it was a super amazing experience. So then, because of my work on the Etzendeka, when I finished my PhD, I had the opportunity to go across to Potsdam, Germany, and continue my studies there as a postdoc, supervised by Dr. Bob Trumbull, who actually happened to be the examiner on my PhD. So thanks to Lou's connections again. And there I was working as part of the South Atlantic Margins Project, which is looking at changes in space and time of magmatism all along the two continental margins in South America, and Southern Africa during this time of breakup and the formation of the South Atlantic. So it was actually a huge project involving researchers from many different institutions, and we were dealing with really big data. So geochemical data and geochronological data from every single magmatic rock on both margins, both continents, between basically 200 and 100 million years. And so some of my tasks were putting together this big database and working with big data. And I had a chance also to use artificial intelligence as a means for pattern recognition, looking for groupings within geochemical data sets. And we published some of that work specifically applied to looking at magma components within the Etzendeka dike suite. Which was also a whole nother learning experience for me. And of course, I got to live in Germany and learn a new language and learn about a new culture and meet a whole horde of other really interesting people, not just scientists, and people I'm still in contact with today. So I've just mentioned a couple of places that I've been to as part of my Wits studies and a little bit afterwards, but obviously there are a whole bunch of other places that I've been lucky enough to go to for conferences and fieldwork and lab work and workshops and so on that I'm not really going to talk about. But I could have continued my career overseas and continued studying elsewhere, but I had the opportunity and an offer from UJ to come back to South Africa. And of course, I jumped at that opportunity to come back and contribute my skills to Africa and African geoscience and society. So since coming back to South Africa and joining UJ, I've worked on a whole bunch of different things, but my main focus at the moment is on the Kunene and North-South conflict, which sits in Angola and Namibia. And this is a proterozoic, mesoproterozoic, massif type anorthosite complex, which is probably the largest in the world, and yet one that not many people know much about, including geologists. And it's been amazing working on these really strange, fascinating, enigmatic rocks that we know so little about. Like really fundamental geoscience. There's still things that we don't know, really essential things about how they form, like why there's so much plagioclase in these rocks. Where is the rest of what we would expect to see? And why do they only seem to form in the Proterozoic? What was happening at that time? What processes are specific to that time period that are not around today? And what tectonic setting were these rocks formed in? We really have no idea. And we seem to see that these rocks form, they're placed and crystallized over really long time periods. So at least our team has shown for Kunene that the emplacement was probably over more than 100 million years. How is that even possible? We still have to be able to explain that somehow. And so it's been the work of a huge team that we've got together. So researchers and students from 3 institutions here in South Africa, from Pretoria and Wits and from UJ, from institutions in Angola, from government institutions, from the survey. We've actually got a fantastic collaboration going now where we supported and we collaborate with Anglo-American in working with their geologists and exploration practitioners on the ground in Angola, and that's been a fantastic learning experience. And all of these people in this big research group with their different backgrounds and experience are looking at different aspects of the complex. They're looking at the structures and the tectonic setting. They're looking at the thermal influence of the intrusion on the host rocks. They're looking at mineralization processes, and they're looking at the chemistry and mineralogy and the age of the rocks. And so it's really a big multidisciplinary team that's working on a big picture, exciting problem. And that's been fantastic to be involved with. And of course, it's continuing. So if you guys who are students want to become involved, we're advertising projects all the time. So please look out for those and sign up right away. So we've been to Angola now several times, 4 times, also to the Namibian part of the complex. And this again has been quite extreme field work, probably the most extreme that I've ever done. This is a very remote part of the world. Only accessible by 4x4, lots of relics of the Civil War still there that you have to contend with. Not much water, even less petrol. And yeah, you're lucky if you can find someone who speaks Portuguese, let alone English. But all of these have been really exciting challenges to contend with, and it's been an absolute privilege working there. It's a spectacularly beautiful country. It's Africa's next top tourist destination, I'm telling you now. And we've just had the chance to explore there and meet amazing people and learn a bit about the culture. And again, it's been an amazing privilege. So this brings me to the next part of my talk, and I think I'm really speaking to the wrong audience here. So I guess I've shown you a little bit about my adventures being a scientist and being an academic, and I really want to inspire some others of you to take up this career path too, because it is really worthwhile and fun, and you won't regret it. So if you really like traveling and you like exploring the world and seeing new things, then academia is for you. If you want to meet new, interesting people from different backgrounds and work with people from industry to academia to school kids to government to people from the media, from everywhere, and not just be working within one of those compartments, then academia is absolutely for you. If you're just curious about the world and you think the Earth is a fascinating place and you just want to learn something new every day, you should be a scientist. And if you want to share that passion for science and see other people's eyes light up when you talk about science, you should be an academic. You should be able to teach what you know to other people. If you want to really make your own path in life and determine what you want to work on, when you want to work on it, and where you want to work on it, academia is one of the few jobs that allows you to do that. So most jobs have a very specific job description and a profile, and they look for somebody who can fit that profile. And they're not really interested in what you as an individual will give. They just want to know what you can deliver to them, right? Whereas as an academic, you actually create your job profile. It's your interests and your experience that drive what you then go on to work on and who you work with and where you do that work. And that's a real privilege. If you want to make an impact, so if you want the work you do to have meaning and influence and longevity, then academia is for you. You're not just making money for somebody or making a few individuals happy in their lifetime, right? Every bit of knowledge that you contribute is then a brick in the wall of this vast edifice that is human collective knowledge. Every contribution you make builds on the contributions of others before you to take humanity forward. Those ideas you have and the papers you write and the textbooks you write will be read by people all over the world, and probably in centuries to come, they'll be referring to Owen-Smith et al. I hope still down the line, even if they don't even know who you are, they will be referring to your work. And that's the real exciting thing. That's really being part of this vast global network that connects people across the eons is what science and what humanity is about. So I hope I'm inspiring you. But I often, when I say this and when I give these kind of talks to students, they say to me, you know, I am adventurous and I like science, but I don't see a place for myself in academia. I don't think I would fit in there. And then when I prompt them, they say, oh, academics, they're all old, or they're all men, they're all white people, they're all super clever people. I wouldn't fit in there. I don't see a place for myself. And that's the thing. If you don't see people like you in academia, then that is exactly why academia needs you, right? And you've got to make a place for yourself. I mean, just think of what the science is missing out on if a whole sector of society is not represented in the science and in the science decision making. And all those brilliant minds and all those ideas and different backgrounds and different perspectives that we could put on our problems to take us forward as humanity. And that's why we need you in academia to play that role and to make the space for yourself that you want to see in academia and make that path for others to follow you. And that's the message that I want to give to you today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Trish, for wonderful and inspiring talk. One comment definitely worth sharing. Trish still does graffiti in the UJT room.
Oh, no.
Are there any questions?
Not a question, but can I make a comment, please? Trish went back to the days when she was a timid little arrival at Wits. I mean, now everything is done online. You decide what your career is going to be without talking to anybody. In the good old days, I won't say exactly what year, but you arrived at Wits during registration week, and you wandered around and you talked to people at various information desks and departmental desks to find out if this oddball subject was really for you. Trish mentioned how maybe it was the shortest queue. And there's another person in the audience who on that very same day, in that very same year, also talked to Luan. That's grand fun. And if we had the registering online system like we now, we would never have had Trish and Grant as geologists. So we have lost an awful lot by doing things online. So we were very fortunate for someone like you doing the advertising for Wits students. Well done, Martin.
Yeah, I agree. We've lost a little bit of the serendipity in some of these opportunities with everything being online, and also in science and research. I mean, you don't anymore stumble across a journal lying on the table that you browse through and you find something interesting. You actually have to be looking for it online to find that article. So I agree, we've lost a little bit of that, but we can change that. We need to interact more.
I'm interrupt Nikki Wagner who said exactly the same thing. I'm inspired to be a geologist. I was due to a short queue.
Yeah, you're really efficient at registration.
Any other questions or comments or anecdotes to share?
I think there's some hands in there, so 2 hands in there. It's okay. I think one of them was used.
Oh yeah, 2 hands up.
That's the last time me.
Lou, your hands up. Do you have a question?
I have a story.
Let's have it.
So I wanted to share with this audience exactly what took place on that fateful day. I think it was in January of 2004 or 2005. I don't remember. At the registration hall in the Great Hall place. And I was asked by the head of school, I think it was Paul Dirks at the time, to participate in that registration. And at that time, I had an idea. I asked his permission if I could sit at the chemistry department desk to try to trick some of the students who were registering for chemistry to just take geology. And so Paul said, yeah, sure, go for it. So chemistry people were happy for me to sit there. And I had a little sign on the table that said geochemistry. And, I tried my best to get as many of the chemistry students to register for geology, just maybe for something fun. And up walks Trisha, and she hands me her high school record. I don't remember the details of how this works, but I looked at her high school marks and I noticed that she had 7 A's. I'd never seen that before. And I said, okay, come over here. Let's have a chat. And I said, look, you don't know what you want to do. You obviously want to take chemistry. Fine, ka-chink, stamp here. You're registered for chemistry, but please consider registering for geology. In addition, if, you just take geology 1. If you don't like it, you go in a different direction. And she did that. And eventually, as she told you, became my honors student, my PhD student. And I've been working with her ever since. And so on that day, it was good for her. It was also good for me. But in addition to that story, up comes another student. Her name is Natalie DeSetta. You guys probably don't know her, but we certainly do. And here's another chick with 7 A's. And I did the same thing for her. And so she took geology 1, and then she finished her honors degree under my supervision and did a PhD under my supervision. So, wow, what a good day for geology, I'll tell you that. But then up third guy, and this guy is called Grant Bybee. And I thought he had 7 A's too, but he tells me he only had 6. But that's Grant can fill you in on his high school record. But I did the same thing for him. So, he's done his PhD under me. And so I on that day, I picked up 3 superb students who wound up to become excellent geoscientists. And, on that day, I'm sitting there at the chemistry desk and my eyeballs were rolling around like slot machine wheels, ka-ching, and it was just a fantastic day. And I guess I designated these 3 people as my dream team. And we did the most fantastic research in really strange and wonderful parts of the world. DeSetta did her PhD in Norway, I think. No, Corsica, right. Yes. She was looking at blue schist rocks in Corsica. and Grant did his PhD on anorthosites, and Trish did what she told you. So I think that's a pretty interesting story, and I wish I could do it again, but they won't let me go to registration anymore. So we'll have to do it a different way, I guess. Anyway, thanks, Trish. That was a terrific story, and thank you for glorifying me.
Thank you, Lou.
I've also got a hand up from Tadi Wanashe.
Hello, Trish.
Hello.
Great talk. As a student, I'd have to say I was very inspired by it, considering that I did not know such a thing as a geologist existed until I was on my gap year. And to be able to hear all these cool things from you and all the experience that you had was very great. My question, if you perhaps have already covered this or stated it, because I joined the session a little later, then it's fine. I'll just probably go back. But my question to you is, was that aha moment for you? Like, what happened for you to realize that academia is the way to go, or this is what I want to do? And did you have it all figured out, for lack of a better word or lack of better wording, then as in you knew what you wanted to do and you had maybe a rough idea that you would eventually do some of the things that you stated that you've done and are doing, or you sort of just walked into it and evolved into it and did all these things in progressively? That is my question.
Great, thanks. Great question. I certainly did not have it all figured out, as you can hear from my story about pitching up at registration without knowing really what I wanted to do. And I don't think, I still say I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but I just want to continue doing what I'm doing now because it's pretty cool. And that's something I guess I discovered when I was doing my PhD and thought about doing another job, and any other alternative just didn't seem nearly as cool as continuing to do the amazing things that I was doing as a student and traveling everywhere, paid for, sponsored, meeting these amazing, clever people all over the world. There's very few jobs that you get to do that. And so I guess that's when I realized, I just want to keep on doing what I'm doing. I hope that answers your question. It's quite a long question.
Yes. Thank you.
Final questions? No, then I guess all that remains is to thank Trish for an excellent talk. And I guess it will also go up on YouTube so that those who missed it will be able to catch it. Thanks, everyone.